To continue, option 6 is a combination of professional development and elimination of copyright infringement. So this would include the pros of having an adequate school board policy with professional development for all staff, and then that elimination of infringement from the school district to any violations of copyright, so the school would no longer be liable. Cons of this: it can lead to a long process of school board meetings to correct the current board's policy if there is one, or creating an entirely new one, along with approval and of professional development. And this would also include the Miss Lynn and other staff to be honest about if they violated any copyright um, laws in the past, and to be honest enough to tell the district and to get rid of those. Section 8 is choosing the best option. So the best option available for all the stakeholders in this scenario is to discuss with Ms. Lynn individually any copyright infringement and eliminate it. Begin the process of creating a detailed school board policy on copyright and scheduling a professional development opportunity for the staff members to complete as well. During this time, the superintendent and school board would be involved in the process and approving it and selecting adequate professional development, which is in the school's budget, and creating that school board policy would be part of that as well. Section 9 is the implementation of this option. So, like I said before, this is the best available option for all stakeholders involved in this scenario. So to begin with, I would start by meeting with the superintendent. I would set up that meeting, discuss my concerns about Mrs. Lynn's copyright infringement with the superintendent. I would be sure to mention that she did not have the proper education to act in a different way that was sufficient for the district. So therefore, we would need to create that board policy as well as professional development, so a situation like this would not reoccur. Once I would have the approval of the superintendent, I would move forward, and this would also ensure that the board and other appropriate stakeholders would be notified of the actions that we plan to take. Once I had that approval, like I said, I would move forward. I would then meet with Mrs. Lynn and preferably Miss Evans to discuss fair use and why that is not considered fair use, because it was brought out of one classroom. Those copies, it did not stay in a specific classroom. We would eliminate any further copyright infringement that did take place. So Mrs. Lynn would also have to tell us if she gave those blank copies that were copied to other teachers. We would discuss what copyright infringement looks like, how we can avoid that, and we would also provide reassurance that neither of those people are going to be reprimanded at this time, because it was an accidental mistake. There was no education provided by the district, so really it was the district's fault. I would take the blame for that. And then we would discuss this in an ethical and authentic way that Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans both felt that they left the meeting in a positive way. Then I would collect the materials, discuss, again, the fair use and copyright liability violations with anyone else that was involved. That would include Mrs. Williams, that we know of, and explain to her why she can't keep those copies, and then explain that we would also be having a professional development training to get more knowledge on that topic. We would then begin the process of creating that school board policy. Within that policy, we would need to define what is fair use. So fair use and within a classroom, you can make copies for your class. You can't, again, do that outside of the class. That then becomes a infringement. I would explain infringement in that policy, what Creative Commons is for educators. So educators do have more broad a broad ability or background to copy things than a regular person would, and also the four-factor test question to determine if there is copyright infringement. This should be discussed in depth, in detail. It should then be provided to all staff. It should be posted as well next to printing capable devices, copiers, to ensure that all employees do have knowledge of this. So then if it would be violated again, the appropriate disciplinary action can be taken. Within that policy, there should be protocol for proper disciplinary action if copyright does occur. This helps the school so they're not held liable. Then it would just be on the employee for violating that copyright infringement. I believe the proper disciplinary action would be first a write-up, and then if this was a reoccurring thing, you would have to look at limiting copying to someone. So maybe they would have to go through the office to get their copies made. And then eventually, if it continued, termination would be necessary. Next would be following professional development training for the next Act 48 day. If this was not in the budget or there was no money for this, we would have to involve the PTA so that they could create some sort of fundraiser so we could do this training. At this point, this is pretty necessary because the staff is not educated. So this would have to be approved through the Pennsylvania Department of Education to receive that Act 48. This training could be done on the computer if at all possible. That's usually an easy way to get a training done in a timely fashion instead of having a speaker come, which takes months of planning and preparation to do. And this should educate all the staff on copyright laws and infringement to ensure a reoccurring incident does not happen. And lastly, we would monitor copyright violations to keep this from happening. So we would monitor the teachers closely, as well as other support aides and office staff, as well as the PTA members, because they were involved in this incident. Knowing that infringement is not only illegal, but teachers can be sued individually, that's a huge deal. And I think with the proper education that this would stop copyright violations from occurring broadly. Being in compliance is also necessary to protect the principal, the school district, as well as the staff and other teachers from seeing themselves in a lawsuit. If we would like to go ahead and purchase more of that computer software, if that was something that was necessary, since that seems like that's what was the only thing that was copied in this scenario, we would try to collaborate with the PTA to schedule a fundraiser next year, because they only do complete two. So a holiday fundraiser would be a great idea to consider to raise those funds to get additional software. If the solution does not work, then Mrs. Lynn and the other employees, with the appropriate evidence, they would have to be wrote up and eventually be terminated as per the district policy that would be created. Copyright infringement, it is a serious offense for the school district, and they cannot be held liable. So if termination is necessary, that's something that they would have to look at. Mrs. Lynn, as well as the other employees, they will receive that professional development on the topic. It should support the beliefs of the school district, and the staff should and will be adequately trained and knowledgeable of copyright compliance, so they will avoid further violations from occurring. And Section 10, that is the program standards. Standard component 6.3 is program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, and policies and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. In this case study, all of which was highlighted with yellow. Thank you.